About 12 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Time to talk technology with our regular expert, Mathew Dickerson. Mathew, good morning to you.
Good morning, Nick.
Before we get stuck into too much, I want to talk about Facebook really quickly because, of course, I think many people were thrown off base yesterday when Facebook, Messenger, WhatsApp, if you use that, even Instagram were all down. There was a lot of talk about what was happening. Do we have a better idea of what went wrong?
Yeah, we do actually. There's a lot of talk about it maybe being the DNS servers, the servers that advertise names versus IP addresses on the internet. Then there was some talk that it might have been the Broadway Gateway protocols, the BGPs that were down. But Facebook have now come out with a statement and they've said, we're actually going to tell you what happened. It was actually a little bit of maintenance we're doing and just testing the availability of our backbone, and one of our engineers made a mistake. And that mistake basically took down the entire backbone. So when you're going and looking for a Facebook page, it'll go to the nearest server to actually get that first bit of information. But then to get all the information that's all out there on Facebook, it uses a very data intensive backbone to connect all those data centers across the world. That backbone was what was taken down. Now, the cost to Facebook was in the vicinity in the US alone of about $500,000 an hour. So that 6 hours that they were down for, again, that's $3 million down the drain in the US. Worldwide, I haven't got that figure, but obviously it would be more than that. So I'm not sure if that engineer's got a job anymore, whether Mark Zuckerberg's come in and said, actually, I don't really like throwing away $3 million, so you don't work for me anymore. But it was a simple error made by someone who was trying to do some routine maintenance.
I'm no tech expert, obviously, but surely something as big as the backbone for Facebook shouldn't have a single point of failure that a single individual can be snipping away at, even by accident.
Yeah, no, you are absolutely spot on. And they did address that in the full explanation they gave. And they said there are some protocols in place that if you change something, then it should stop something else from happening that will actually detect that that's going to happen. And they said there was an error in the code for that. So you're right. The system was there theoretically, but the code didn't actually cover it. So whoops again, and there goes Facebook.
Let's change topics on that one because I think we're going to hear a lot more about that, especially that poor engineer. I actually have a little bit of empathy for the poor person. We've talked a lot of times about how we get internet from place to place, but of course we often need to talk about how we get power from place to place as well. It's incredibly important. And you have talked a little bit about the world's longest subsea power cable.
Yeah, this has just been switched on, not to full capacity yet, but there's a 724 kilometre power cable that connects Norway across to Great Britain. It goes underneath the North Sea. And that's really important, not just for Great Britain's power supply, not just to have more interconnectedness in Europe, but I think on a world scale, if we can start to get to that point where we can generate power in some locations and get it to somewhere else, that will actually allow us to build this whole renewable energy spectrum up much quicker. And so in Norway, for example, we've got lots of hydropower. In Great Britain, they're still burning lots of coal. But Great Britain is getting to the stage where they're going to have more wind power come on. So at the moment, they're going to be exporting power from Norway, renewable power, nice and cheap, get that across this undersea cable to Great Britain. But the talk is that within 5 years, enough wind power might be on that Great Britain will actually start exporting this power back across to Norway and to other European areas. And this is, I think, the whole picture. When you've got some areas that are great with hydro, for example, Norway, other areas that are great with wind, with solar, as you get those different renewable powers where maybe it's not quite as reliable as just burning coal, having that interconnected grid across all these countries around Europe is really important. But I love the idea, Nick, of getting to that stage where we in Australia, we export lots of stuff we dig out of the ground. Imagine exporting power. So you've got all this space out in the middle of Australia. What about a bunch of solar panels out there? And then start running some undersea cables to Papua New Guinea, the Philippines, Singapore. I mean, people have said China. That's a little bit longer than 724 kilometres to get to China, but it's a possibility. And that's where I think we're headed, where we'll be able to generate power in one location and get it somewhere else. The cables aren't small, though. This cable, there's two of them actually to get that power across. 15 centimetre diameter electrical cables running across. So it's a fair sized cable. About €2 billion was spent connecting it.
It's an incredible engineering feat. I mean, 724 kilometres of cable alone is amazing. Laying it down is incredible. Are we seeing similar projects in other countries?
Yeah, you do see, well, and Great Britain's at the centre of this, I suppose. They are doing connections already. They've got other connections across to other parts of Europe, but they're planning on other connections getting across through the Channel Tunnel. That one's going to be switched on in 2022. They're going across to Denmark by 2023, Germany 2024.
Wow.
But I think this is what we'll see, Nick. I think we'll see, this is the tip of the iceberg, we'll see a whole range of this interconnected grid and sharing power, and probably not sharing, selling power from one nation to the other with all this interconnected grid will be a really important part of that overall electricity solution going forward.
Well, from underwater to outer space, we've talked a lot about Blue Origin, about Jeff Bezos' space ventures. This is an incredible bit of marketing in its own way, but also weirdly sweet. He's taking Will Shatner into space.
Why not? Why wouldn't you take William Shatner up there?
Why not?
Now, it's incredible, actually. I didn't realise Star Trek was such a short thing. I'm not a Trekkie at all. It only ran for 3 years, Star Trek, but William Shatner's still getting advantages out of his role he played back in the 60s. And this is one of those, Jeff Bezos is going to take him up to space where no man has gone before, and he'll be the oldest person ever to go to space. The record at the moment is held as an 82-year-old woman. He'll be 90 when he goes up into space, so that'll be pretty incredible. But William Shatner himself said he's played Captain Kirk and known as Captain Kirk for so much of his life, but I've never been up into space. He said, this is a miracle. This is actually quite incredible. And you can imagine back in the 60s on the sets they would have been on and talking about space. When he started, man hadn't even set foot on the moon. And now he's getting to the point where, as a 90-year-old, he's going to go up to the edge of space. And the big question here, Nick, is really about the future of space tourism and the future of private space exploration. So for so long, we used to see the US and Russia mainly, but also European Space Commission. It was government facilities, government organisations that would look at space. But now we've got all these private operators. I think they can make money out of space tourism, but there's all sorts of other things they're doing as well, whether it be putting satellites up there, whether it be running some internet from space. But there's a whole bunch of stuff. There's a whole new frontier for these businesses to explore up in space.
But Matthew, this has got to be important too to show that space tourism can be for everyone. I mean, obviously still the incredibly wealthy, but we're so used to seeing astronauts coming from a military background. They're scientists, but they've trained incredibly hard. We've always assumed that it was this absolutely physically grueling kind of job, showing that a 90-year-old, even Wally Funk, I think she was in her 80s, showing that they can be up there as well. That does change the game a little bit.
It does, and I think part of the real issue they've got is that, as you say, you can be incredibly famous like William Shatner or have a lot of money, several $100,000 minimum to get up there, but who knows, it may get to that point where it gets cheaper, and then you're right, if people see an 82-year-old, a 90-year-old going up there, they're saying, well, gee, I can save up for that, and instead of going across to New Zealand for holiday skiing next year, I'm going to save up for a couple of years and go up into space. So it does open that all up. It's just the price, I think, is the big thing. If they can get that price down, that'll make it much more attractive.
It'll be very interesting to see where space tourism goes over the next few years or decade even.
Yeah.
Changing tack absolutely entirely. I don't know how much of your life is spent on video calls. Mine a surprising amount when I'm not on air. Is there a way I can look a little better while I'm on my video call, Mathew Dickerson?
I am terrible on video calls because I start telling people how to set themselves up better. Look, can you just change your camera angle? Can you fix up your microphone? Because it's so frustrating when you're seeing people try and do a video call and you see lights from behind or you see video going up their nose or you can't hear them properly. Finally, and this is the thing, Nick, it's taken 18 months really for this product to come out. Finally, someone's put out a monitor that's dedicated. It's got one job in life, to make people look better on video calls. Now, I don't think this would apply to you because I reckon you'd probably have enough technical know-how to actually set things up properly. But for lots of people, they don't. So the first thing it does is it puts lights in the monitor. So you've got lights coming from in front of your face so people can see your face rather from behind you where you look like a bit of a dark blob. Or sometimes you see people with bright overhead lights. So you see these big dark shadows under their eyes. They either look creepy or look like they need to go back to bed. So this puts lights in front of you so you can actually see the person's face. It also puts the video camera right down in the middle or just above the middle of the screen so you look like you're looking at people on there rather than looking off to the side somewhere when you should be looking down at your camera, which is another frustration that I have. And then the audio people sit there and they play around with their audio. They try and get their headset going and they're pushing buttons. This has got high quality directional microphones. You're not going to hear the dogs barking, but you're going to hear the person in the room, and people can hear them because it's got good quality speakers. So essentially, it's all the things you need to have in one easy to use package. So hopefully people use things like this, they can actually start to look a bit better on those video calls.
Now, scare me a little bit. What's the price tag for a product like this?
Look, it's not much. It's basically you're buying a normal monitor. It's a normal 21-inch monitor. So off the top of my head, I'd probably say it'd only be $500 or $600. So not a lot more than what you'd expect to pay for a normal sort of monitor. The things that are built in, let's face it, they're not that expensive. So you're not talking about an incredible new invention. You're just talking about a monitor with some lights and a camera built into it. So it's not anything that's revolutionary. It's just putting it all together in one easy-to-use package. I think that's a really important thing here.
I think that's really clever. Mathew Dickerson, thank you very much. We'll talk again in a fortnight's time. That is our regular tech expert, Mathew there. And look, I've got to admit, I've got a few friends who do, whether it's a job, they do get paid for it, but whether it's a hobby as well, friends of mine who do a lot of streaming online, I think a monitor like that sounds absolutely incredible. Now, I had better get out of here. We're only a couple of minutes away from 10 o'clock.